Marking Korean independence from Japanese colonial rule on March 1st, President Yoon Suk-yeol highlights Seoul and Tokyo relations moving forward, with Japan now a partner, not an aggressor. South Korea's industrial output in January increased for the first time in 4 months, but retail sales continue to decline, showing a slump in consumer demand. The first day of the new school year in South Korea, and for the first time in 4 years, classrooms are mask-free. Good afternoon. President Yoon Suk-yeol yesterday made his first speech marking the country's March 1st Independence Movement Day. Usually such speeches have reflected South Korean presidents' visions for Seoul-Tokyo relations. And President Yoon, while upholding the independence spirit, highlighted the two countries' partnership moving forward while limiting remarks about the past. Our top office correspondent, Oh Soo-young, reports.
South Korea now sees Japan as a cooperative partner for future prosperity, rather than a militant oppressor of the past. President Yoon Suk-yeol made a landmark speech on Wednesday, showing Seoul's strong will to overcome long-standing differences with Tokyo. He said the two must now work together on mutual interests in pursuing global security and economic prosperity.
3.1운동 이후 한 세기가 지난 지금 일본은 과거 군국주의 침략자에서 우리와 보편적 가치를 공유하고 안보와 경제 그리고 글로벌 아젠다에서 협력하는 파트너가 되었습니다.
Yoon's remarks came at a ceremony that marked the 104th anniversary of Korea's March 1st or Samil independence movement, a series of protests triggered in 1919 against Japan's oppressive colonial rule of the country. Reflecting upon the need to remember the sacrifices made in the past for the sovereignty of the country, Yoon stressed that South Korea must now prepare for the ever-changing global trends and complexities. In this regard, he said bolstering trilateral ties with the United States and Japan is essential.
복합 위기와 심각한 북핵 위협 등 안보 위기를 극복하기 위한 한미일 3자 협력이 그 어느 때보다 중요해졌습니다.
This comes amid Seoul and Tokyo's recent move towards security cooperation against North Korea's growing missile provocations through measures such as joint military drills and intel sharing with Washington. The two neighbors also held a trilateral dialogue with the US on economic security on Monday, a significant step towards overcoming their bilateral spat that began in 2019 over historical disputes. Reflecting on the spirit of solidarity and cooperation that sparked the March 1st movement, Yoon said South Korea must now contribute to promoting freedom and common prosperity for all global citizens. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's remarks that called Japan a cooperative partner was welcomed by Japan and the United States. At a press conference in Tokyo on Tuesday, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokatsu Matsuno largely echoed Yoon, saying South Korea is an important neighbor that we should cooperate on global issues. Meanwhile, U.S. State Department Press Secretary Ned Price said the U.S. supports, quote, President Yoon Suk-yeol's future-oriented vision with Japan, adding that Washington applauds both Seoul and Tokyo for their efforts to improve relations in recent months. Seoul and Tokyo have been holding a series of high-level talks over compensating Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor, one of the major sources of the two nations' soured relations. Meanwhile, back here at home, people across South Korea marked the March 1st Independence Movement Day in their own ways, honoring those who sacrificed their lives for the freedom the country enjoys today. Our Boon Hae-ryun has the story.
104 years ago, thousands of students and leaders alike were massacred by the Japanese police force and army as they gathered in the streets of Seoul in solidarity against the annexation of the Korean peninsula by Japan. Every year on March 1st, South Korea hangs the national flag from buildings and on the streets in remembrance. And this year, people can once more see Korean flags filling the streets outside Hyochang Park in Seoul, commonly dubbed Park of Heroes. One of the independence activists laid to rest in the park is Kim Gu, the head of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea, first established on April 11, 1919. The independence movement of March 1st provided a catalyst for its establishment, and the National Memorial of the Korean Provisional Government in its exhibitions shows how it was done and the key figures behind it. More than 200 copies of the Declaration of Independence were drawn up in 1919, but on display here are the 4 main copies. The first was announced in Tokyo on February 8th, and the second was read aloud at the start of the March 1st independence movement by 33 representatives. The third was issued in Jilin, China, and the fourth is the Provisional Government Declaration. According to the director of the Memorial Center, South Korea's quest for independence through the press went beyond Asia to all 4 corners of the world.
I hope that people will be able to understand that the independence movement didn't just happen within the country. It happened in every place where Koreans were in the world.
Visitors to the exhibition can learn more about the provisional government and leave behind their own traces in history by coloring in a wall mural. With the fight for independence against foreign oppression happening around the world even today, March 1st and what it stands for is still of great significance. 문혜련, Arirang News.
South Korea's industrial output in January increased for the first time in 4 months, but retail sales continue to decline, showing a slump in consumer demand. Our Lee Soo-jin has the details.
South Korea's overall industrial production in January rose compared to the month before, for the first time in 4 months. Data from Statistics Korea on Thursday shows that the index for the country's industrial output stood at 109.7, up 0.5% from the previous month. The agency attributed the rise in overall industrial production to the increase in production in the mineral and manufacturing sectors as well as the service sector. Despite a fall in semiconductor production, output in the mining and manufacturing sectors combined rose by nearly 3% compared to a month earlier, with a strong performance in camera modules and eco-friendly cars. However, mining and manufacturing production was still down compared to the previous year.
As you are probably aware, the on-year decrease in the mining and manufacturing sector was quite large, especially because of the decrease in chip production amid the decline in the semiconductor market. The fall can also be attributed to the number of working days, which was 1 fewer in January due to the Lunar New Year holiday.
The service sector grew 0.1% compared to the month before, led by a rise in the retail and wholesale sector and software development and computer programming industries. However, retail sales, a barometer for consumer demand, edged down 2.1% on month. Facility investment also fell 1.4% as investment in machinery declined. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea aims to focus on the recovery of semiconductor exports while increasing investment in K-content-related industries. This is according to Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho in a ministerial meeting on Thursday, where he said a rebound in chips is essential for overall export in recovery. He also pledged to invest in developing technologies in sectors like chips, semiconductor batteries, secondary batteries that is, and EVs. Chu also said overseas business bases will be established to promote South Korean movies, dramas, and other content in cities including New York by the end of this year. The government will provide funds to boost content exports in order to reach a yearly export figure of some $25 billion by 2027. In South Korea, a new school year starts today, and for the first time in 4 years, students are free not to wear face masks. Yoon tells us what it's like to be back in school under the eased mask rule.
Elementary, middle, and high schools nationwide are returning for the new school year today, with entrance ceremonies being held as normal. And it'll be the first time in 4 years since the outbreak of COVID-19 that students will not be required to wear masks. Schools have also made administrative changes, where self-diagnostic apps are no longer required, temperature checks will not be a part of daily school routine, and safety dividers in cafeterias have been taken down. Over the past 4 years, schools have had to make constant adjustments. In March 2020, the start of the new school year was delayed multiple times until an online school platform went into effect in the middle of April. Schools returned to in-person learning in the following years, but masks were mandatory, and due to social distancing mandates, students' activities and interactions were restricted. Even with the mask mandate being dropped nationwide on January 30th, many people have still opted to keep their masks on. And many students will have to wear their masks on the way to school if they use school buses or public transportation. Though no longer required, schools will likely not be completely mask-free. The Education Ministry has strongly advised that masks be worn by those with symptoms or those at high risk of infection. Masks are also recommended for those who have come in contact with a COVID-19 patient, those in closed-off high-density environments, and when people are shouting or singing. The changes are expected to have a positive psychological impact on students as they return to a normalized social environment. Yoon, Arirang News.
South Korea is gearing up to launch a new space agency, the Korean version of NASA, this year. The Minister of Science and ICT on Thursday announced his proposal for a special law related to the establishment and operation of the new space agency. The law will combine the roles carried out by different ministries, allowing a single agency tentatively named the Korea Space and Aeronautics Administration to focus on the country's space projects. It will also grant the administration flexibility in the recruitment, organization, and payment of personnel. The Science Ministry will receive feedback on the proposal up until March 17th to finalize the law before it is put forward for approval at the National Assembly in the first half of this year. The U.S. has slapped fresh sanctions on North Korean individuals and companies illicitly making money overseas and allegedly funding the regime's nuclear developments. The move comes amid an increase in missile tests by the regime. Kim Hyun-sung reports.
The U.S. has taken more action against those supporting North Korea's illicit behavior. The Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, on Wednesday local time sanctioned 3 companies and 2 individuals for illicitly generating income for the North Korean government. Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence Brian Nelson emphasized the U.S. commitment to targeting the regime's illicit networks that help fund its destabilizing activities such as its weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs. The sanctioned companies include Chilsung Trading Corporation and Korea Petco Trading Corporation. The department said that these companies have generated funds for the North Korean government. OFAC also sanctioned 2 people, Hwang Gil-soo and Park Hwa-song. The 2 are accused of establishing Congo Akon Sarl in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to earn revenue from construction and statue building projects. Their commercial activities are suspected to have generated income for the DPRK regime. The sanctioned entities will have their transactions and properties blocked, and individuals will be denied entry into the U.S. In a separate statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Wednesday's action further aligns U.S. sanctions with our international partners, and that the United States is committed to countering North Korea's efforts to generate revenue for its weapons programs. This follows North Korea's strategic cruise missile test last week and ICBM test launch last month. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Now on to the latest in Ukraine. Moscow claims it repelled a massive drone attack by Ukraine on Russian-annexed Crimea, which Ukraine denies. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Putin's close ally, Belarusian President Lukashenko, amid concerns over Beijing's possible provision of lethal aid for the Kremlin. Lee Seung-jae has more.
According to the Russian Defense Ministry on Wednesday, an attempt by Ukraine to carry out a massive drone attack on the Crimean Peninsula has been prevented. It said that out of a total of 10 drones, 6 were shot down, while 4 were disabled. The latest statement comes after the Kremlin earlier this week claimed that a number of drones had been sent deep inside Russia, including near the capital. Russian authorities on Tuesday also reported several drone attacks in regions bordering Ukraine. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko for talks on Wednesday. China and Belarus are two of the few close allies of Russia. The leaders held face-to-face talks for the first time since September 2022. The meeting also comes as Ukraine's Western allies fear that China will eventually come to the assistance of Russia, which is currently seeing its military arsenal depleted after over a year of war with Ukraine. However, according to a Chinese readout of the meeting held between the two leaders, China remains firm that it is a neutral party in the conflict, adding that Beijing's core position is promoting peace and diplomacy. Meanwhile, the official statement from China also noted that President Lukashenko and the Belarusian government agree with and support China's stance and proposition on a political solution to the Ukrainian crisis, which is significant to resolving the crisis. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
For 2 months in a row, K-pop girl group NewJeans has held the top 3 spots on streaming service Melon's monthly chart. According to its agency on Thursday, NewJeans' song Ditto, OMG and Hype were ranked 1st, 2nd, and 3rd on the February 2023 chart of Melon, the most popular music streaming service platform in South Korea. This is the 2nd straight month that NewJeans have dominated the top 3 spots. No other artist has achieved that feat in back-to-back months in Melon's 18-year history. Last week, the song Ditto also topped Melon's weekly chart for the 10th consecutive week, also first in Melon's history. Following the easing of social distancing rules, musicals resuming their international tours. This means that overseas casts are making their way back to South Korea to meet musical fans. Our Song Yoo-jin met one musical actor who's making much-needed meaningful changes to the industry.
Yeah, my name is Joanna Ampil, and I'm a theater performer.
For the past 30 years, Joanna has been in numerous musicals worldwide, including Miss Saigon, The Sound of Music, and Rent. The West End star is from the Philippines and is currently performing in South Korea as part of the cast for Cats the Musical. After premiering in 1981, Cats has become one of the most beloved musicals of all time, sweeping trophies at the prestigious Tony and Grammy Awards. And although Joanna has been in the industry for decades, she says she's still in love with her job.
I think it's such a privilege, first of all, to be able to represent different characters. And being in theater is such a powerful platform. And also, you give the audience the opportunity to celebrate different emotions.
Joanna has been playing her dream role, Grisabella in Cats, for 10 years. She describes being able to sing the hit number Memory every night as an honor. But her road to success was not always easy.
I have auditioned for roles and not gotten it because I'm a person of color, but at the same time, I've also gotten roles because of my background, because I can offer something fresh and something different. I think that if a person can deliver and the goods and they can perform the role to the best of their abilities, then that person should play the role.
She says she's happy that there's a lot more diversity in the theater nowadays. Joanna Ampil is one of the pioneers of this meaningful change. She was the first Asian to portray Fontaine in Les Miserables in the West End back in 2003. After Cats, she's going back to the UK to take part in Miss Saigon. Originally, she played the main character Kim, but this time, Joanna will make even more history by becoming the first female actor to play the role of engineer. As for what kind of actor she ultimately wants to be, her answer is
someone who just perhaps moved them in some way with the performance, and someone who can represent.
Cats can be seen at the Sejong Grand Theater until March 12th in Central Seoul. Tickets can be purchased online. 송유진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Greece, rescue operations are continuing after two trains collided near the city of Tempe, killing dozens and leaving even more injured. At least 43 people died in the crash that occurred on Tuesday night local time when a passenger train collided head-on with a freight train after leaving the town of Larissa. The passenger train had over 350 people on board, many of whom were students returning from a long weekend of carnival celebrations. According to Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the accident was caused by a, quote, tragic human error. A local station master has since been charged with manslaughter by negligence after the two trains were left running on the same track for several kilometers. Greek Transport Minister Kostas Karamanlis resigned following the tragedy. Moving on to Nigeria now, where Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress Party has been declared the country's new president-elect. Nigeria's Electoral Commission made the announcement on Wednesday after Tinubu won 36% of the votes against two other front-running candidates. He also won 25% of the votes in two-thirds of the country's 36 states and capital, a requirement needed to become president. But opposition candidates have called for voting to take place again, alleging the elections were rigged because of isolated cases of violence at some polling stations and voting delays. 70-year-old Tinubu will assume the presidency on May 29th. He'll face a slew of challenges, including cash shortages, high living costs, and security issues. Meanwhile, former France striker and World Cup record holder Just Fontaine has died at the age of 89. His death on Wednesday was announced by his former club Reims and by the French Football Federation, who described him as the eternal goalscorer. Fontaine holds the world record for most goals scored in a single World Cup, scoring 13 goals in 6 matches at the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. Despite only making one World Cup appearance, Fontaine's goal count puts him at joint 4th place in the all-time World Cup goal scorers list. In his career, Fontaine appeared 21 times for France between 1953 and 1960, scoring 30 goals. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Dress in extra layers. We had a cold start with a cold wave advisory issued for some inland areas in Gangwon-do province, but readings remain below normal all day and strong winds are dragging down feels-like temperatures a couple of notches lower than the thermometer readings today. But most parts of Korea are under dry weather alert. East of Gangwon-do province is under a dry weather warning and that strong wind is not helping. It's forecast to be windier tomorrow in mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province with almost typhoon-force winds. And such conditions are likely to increase wildfire activity, so please be extra careful. Afternoon temperatures are 2 to 5 degrees lower this afternoon, reaching below 10 degrees in most areas under sunny skies with normal to good air quality today. Then the brief cold snap lifts tomorrow. Then we can look forward to much warmer conditions with temperatures reaching the mid-teens in the capital by early next week with no significant rainfall in the forecast. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.